Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Are you ready?
This live
Are you
talk.
ready?
Live
Are you
talk.
ready?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready? All right, welcome to Live Talk. I am your host, Arthur Jeremiah, alongside my co-host, the minister, Samuel.
Welcome back again to Live Talk.
All right, indeed it is. All right, so before we get into anything, let's go over our general statement and our disclaimer. Live Talk is proudly powered by TBS Goodwill, Builders of the Highway Foundation, and Men of Purpose. Together, we're bringing about awareness to the everyday challenges facing individuals, communities, and our nation. We tell our stories, listen to yours, and always respect different perspectives. Want to share your voice? Email us at livetalkorl@gmail.com to be a guest, or if you would like to contribute to our mission, purpose, go to livetalkorl.com to give a donation. Disclaimer. Information provided during this event and others to come does not constitute the official opinion of Live Talk or its affiliate entities. It is strongly recommended that viewers seek independent expert advice regarding any topics discussed, as legal requirements differ significantly across jurisdictions and are subject to frequent changes. If you have questions or concerns, you can always email us at livetalkorl@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Facebook and or Instagram at Live Talk Orlando. All right. So we have to get that out the way. Our general statement and disclaimer. It covers all our entities and it covers whatever we're talking about on our platform. Minister, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great today. Welcome everybody back to Sunday. Hopefully you're having a happy and a good Sunday morning, afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in.
Yes, sir. Indeed. No, I mean, it's going to be a beautiful day. I think the information that we're going to be sharing today is going to be enlightened, and it's going to be something that touch our community in a way that we can grow from. So I look forward to our guest today. I look forward to our conversation today. But just for the listening audience, it's going to give you a rundown of the show today. First, we're going to have a word of today from the minister. Right after that, we're going to go to a short commercial break. And then we'll come back with our main topic. And our main topic is raising a child on the spectrum. Strategies and advice from an experienced parent. We will be joined by our guest today, Harmon Murphy. Right after that, we'll go to another commercial break, and then we'll come back. And we're going to expand on it a little bit because we're going to talk about one of the laws that we talked about in the prior show that kind of relates to this, touch on this here, which is HB 1275. And then after that, we'll get ready to close out with a motivational quote or reading from the host. So with no further ado, Minister, what is the word of today?
All right. The word of today is going to be communication. And because I know a lot of times we talk about communication, how important communication is. And that's really one of the reasons we want to highlight this part of the show, this topic on this show, because communication on this is often lacking, right, especially in our community. But communication basically is the exchange of information. Communication, and I'm moving through my notes here, is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. And that's very important. I'm going to say that one again. It is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a system of signs, symbols, or behavior, because you can be on one part of communication, but you might miss it on a different part of the communication, and someone is trying to communicate it and they may not be receiving it. Because basically in communication, well, part of it, you got three parts. You got the sender, you got the message, and then you got the recipient. For good communication, all three of those need to be able to take place. Like there's a very good saying, it says we have two ears and one mouth. And the reason we got two ears, one mouth is because we need to listen when we really want to understand something. We can talk about something often, but the key to good communication begins with being able to listen and receive the information, and then we can begin with some communication.
That's so real. You know, I always say there's two form of, I say there's a, like what you alluding to here. You can listen to something or you can hear something. I always say when you're listening to it, you're processing it. You're taking it in, you're inculcating, you're understanding what's being said. But a lot of times when we hear something, it goes through one ear and out the other ear. We may have heard it, but we didn't process it enough to get an understanding of it. And I think it is a difference when it comes to listening and hearing.
Yes.
And that's, you bring up some key points, because what we're going to be talking about today, there's different forms of communication.
Yes.
And that we have to be mindful of as well, because sometimes it just may not be verbal. Right. It can be, like you said, signs and symbols. Yep. You know, you said also behavior and conduct. All those are signs that we have to identify in the form of communication, because how can you communicate with a baby when they can't give you words that you can actually understand? Exactly. So either they're crying and they're saying, I need to be changed, right? Or I need to eat. So those are forms of communication that we pick up on because we see how they act, their behavior and things of that nature. So we're going to be talking big about that. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, no, especially on this topic, because even beyond the baby, when children start to get older, especially if they're on the spectrum, their way of communicating may not be verbal. Right. And they may be communicating in a different manner. And if you don't understand it and misinterpret it, it can lead to problems, because they're doing what's normal to them, for them to communicate. Right. And if you're not receiving it, then they can get misunderstood, misdiagnosed, or just totally, it's like, okay, why aren't they getting this? It's not, they're not getting it. You're not getting it.
That's it. All right, so we're going to get more into this here. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back with our guest of today.
What do all these people have in common besides a beautiful smile, healthy teeth, and gums? They all use Zadi toothpaste. Zadi toothpaste is made with all natural ingredients. Zadi toothpaste is fortified with moringa and baking soda. Zadi toothpaste is suds-free, making it an excellent choice for kids. All natural, fortified, and suds-free. Get yours today at noistore.com.
All right, welcome back to Live Talk, where we delve into inspiring stories and insightful communication or conversations that touch home with our community. And today we have a very special guest joining us, a dedicated father who has a unique perspective to share with us. He is here to open up about his journey as a parent of a child with autism, shedding light on the challenges, triumphs, and invaluable lessons learned along the way. So get ready to be touched by his journey of love, resilience, and the unbreakable connection between a father, his son, and their family. So with that being said, welcome to the show, Brother Herman.
Thank you. Nice to meet everybody. Nice to be here today. I appreciate
All right. And we're that you're here because we've been knowing each other, man. Probably about 6 years.
I've been here in the Florida area about 6 years now. So about 6 years.
About 6 years.
Yes, sir.
Because I remember when I was working on the property with Alpha Park.
Yeah,
and you was at Home Depot at that time.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was it's been a while.
Yes.
And you was dating I call it family. We all family.
We all family.
La at the time, and now you guys are married.
Yes.
And you had
2 years worth of marriage. Actually, this is our 10th year together. 2 years worth of marriage, 10 years together. So we've been very blessed.
Awesome. And I've been cheering for you guys the whole time. So
and we really appreciate it. We need as much cheers and help and guidance as we can can attain.
All right. So in that process, you guys brought into this world a young man.
Yes.
Cairo.
Yes.
Right?
Who actually just turned 6 2 weeks ago.
Right. So happy belated to him.
Yes.
I think it was the 16th.
Yes. 16th.
Yeah, the 16th.
April 16th.
Yeah.
Which is very fitting. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're still in April, which is Autism Awareness Month.
Yes, it is.
So it kind of ties together. I guess this was kind of meant to be our journey.
Yes, sir. Indeed. All right. So, before we even get into talking about, autism, I want you to just share with us, who is Cairo? Like, who is he?
Oh man, we call him our special boy. I can't even describe him in one word. He's just a bundle. Okay. Some days it depends on what you get. Some days that bundle might be a bundle of joy or a bundle of something else, but it depends on what you get each day. But nevertheless, my wife was we actually were just talking about this. My wife was in labor with him for almost 23 hours.
Ooh, she got a story to tell.
She's gonna come up here. Maybe one day we'll get her to get the women's side. You know what I mean? She has a story to tell in herself.
Her story, his story. Okay,
yes, it's the same. But he's just a magical guy. Even though he was initially labeled nonverbal.
Okay.
But we have kind of surpassed that. He doesn't have a full vocabulary. But through prayer, counseling, a lot of guidance, a lot of sleepless nights. We surpassed certain tasks and fates that they thought we might have not accomplished. So we continue to move and pray, and he's amazing. He's amazing.
Awesome.
Let me ask a question just from the beginning, because you say Cairo.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to spell his name for me.
So we spell it Kairo, not the traditional way with the C.
Cairo.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but it's with a K.
Yes, sir, with the K instead of a C.
All right. So I want to welcome Cairo. I'm glad that you introduced him to us. And I know you sent us a lot, but just the beginning, I want to hear his name.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to get it off topic, but who picked the name?
So my name officially is Herman Murphy. I'm not a junior because me and my father do not have the same middle name.
Okay.
My initial plan, my wife's initial plan was for him to be a third.
Okay.
Herman is a old school name. And I wanted him to have his own identity.
Okay.
I wanted him to be his own man. My father in my community was a very prominent man. I grew up in Piscataway, New Jersey. My father was from Charleston, South Carolina, by way of Plainfield, New Jersey. So he was the man.
Okay.
Gold like Mr. T, very tall, handsome, debonair brother. Got his suits tailored every Sunday for church.
Okay.
And I found it kind of hard.
Left you some big shoes to step into, right?
And he was about 6'5", and I'm only about 5'8" in the court on a good day.
Okay.
So he left me big shoes to fill. So I didn't want my son to have to fill anybody else's shoes but himself.
Okay.
So that was the cause of. And then, Cairo, I wanted him to be in touch with who he is as a black man. So that was a lot of the thought behind naming him that.
Okay. Well, can you share with us your journey of discovering autism? Because this is the thing. His birth, we ain't thinking about autism. Probably up to whatever age, maybe that was, at that point.
Right.
But share with us the journey up to that point.
Okay. So Cairo got diagnosed with autism when he was 2 years old.
Okay.
He was actually going to a daycare, and we noticed certain things. And along, for just to give some information, when you're on your journey, you might not notice certain things until after they happen, or till after the diagnosis happens. So like I said, he was diagnosed when he was 2 years old, probably shortly after he first started walking. The thing that raised some problems with me and my wife in the beginning, they just took it upon themselves to diagnose my son. Once they noticed things that they had seen from kids
without our consent.
So you have to be mindful of that as well, that don't let anybody pressure you into anything. Because people will come at you with paperwork and doctors and counselors and things like that. And it could be it's already an overwhelming thing going into something that you don't know. Yeah. And then once he got diagnosed around 2 years old, they're like, well, hey, we brought some counselors in here to like evaluate your son. And we're like, well, why would you do that? Like, what did you know? Like, we're first time parents. Right. We don't know these things. And it's even harder being first time parents. So we're already at a disadvantage because there's a bunch of things that we don't know.
Right.
So they diagnose him. They're like, well, we're like, what do you see that we don't see? Like, what, we don't know anything about autism. And if anybody in our family did have autism in our families, our individual families, they probably weren't diagnosed.
Right.
So everything is like a whirlwind of information. They diagnose him and they say, well, we noticed that when he walks, he does like things with his hands, or he spins a lot. So that's one thing that you should look out for if your kid has certain repetitious patterns. That can be a key thing, a sign that they might have some autism or some type of a disorder. Okay. So we get diagnosed, and about a month, that was probably the hardest 3 to 6 months in me and my wife's marriage.
Let me ask you, I know we're going to keep on. Now, prior to that point of being, diagnosed and finding out that he now has autism, was there any signs like up to that point? Or was he just so there were signs that we didn't know until after we started doing our research. Okay. Like the spinning, the hand gestures. Before the age of 2, my son would eat well. He would eat what we gave him. And then it seemed like after or around the diagnosis, his food patterns changed. He would only eat crunchy things or things that were textured. He wouldn't eat like mashed potatoes or, certain milks. We had to switch pretty much his whole diet and the way that we do things, just because to help us understand like what he's feeling, because he can't verbalize how he feels or if he's hungry, or even with his speech a little bit. Like it seems like, around 2 years old, you're developing the mom, dad, smart, like smaller words of your vocabulary. And it seems like he took a step backwards. You know what I mean? It seems like his vocabulary got a little bit smaller, or he was struggling to attain or retain certain information and or get out certain words. It was more so with the vocabulary that we kind of noticed. Like it kind of seemed like he was forming like a speech impediment.
And that's what I was thinking, because my dad had a speech impediment.
Okay.
Pretty much all of his life. So I'm like, oh, he might have a speech impediment like my father did. So I'm like, we didn't really think anything of it. We, when you notice certain things, you're like, well, he's just growing. You know what I mean? So like, you might be naive, like especially as a first time parent. Again, you might be naive to certain things. Okay. So once you get diagnosed, or you go a little bit further in the journey, you kind of think back and reflect, like, oh wow, like that was part of what was going on. But
you didn't see that after.
Yes, a lot of things you're not going to see until afterwards, especially because you're going in blindly. You're going in, and then even when, like, we were in denial. We were in very much denial.
I was going to get to that point, and I'm going to let you go ahead and share on it, because a lot of times, especially in our community, we don't want to speak nothing negative on our child. Because we experience some of these things, but it's like, I just had a child. I'm not finna speak that into existence. So speak on that a little bit. I'm gonna let you.
So I think the biggest thing with us is, one, we didn't want to have, the connotation, especially. Even though autism has been around, it's just getting popularized.
Right.
Because there's so many cases now that they're starting to monitor it a little bit more well than they did maybe, let's say, 10, 20 years ago. 10, 20 years ago, they were still sending special needs students to special schools, or sending them to hospitals to rectify them. You know what I mean? So that in itself is a big step to be where we are now. But as far as me and my wife, we were in very much denial, like, because we didn't want anyone to label our child. It's already hard enough being African American. We already got stigmatisms, and then when you have illnesses, it's like a double whammy. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then on top of that, we don't want anybody to. We didn't know, like, if we would have to place him in a special institution, or like what the severity of his like, doing our research, we know that there's many different levels to the diagnosis. So, but going into it, we're just thinking the utmost worst. We're like panicking because we're new parents.
That's
I'm gonna keep reiterating. Like it's hard and scary being a new parent, especially like in 2017 I lost both of my parents same year.
Oh wow.
So I didn't have any form of real guidance with me. So like, I couldn't have my mom come stay with me for a week and help my wife.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right before your son.
And right before my son. My son was born 2018. My parents passed away 2017. My father, January 4th of 2017. My mother, April 4th of 2017. Wow. So my April is also my mother's deceased anniversary. Okay. So April is a all around whirlwind of a month for my family. Yes. Right. But going back to being in denial, like, we just didn't want to have any type of stigmatism. We didn't want him to be on any medication. We're like, well, what if they try to pressure us to be on medication? Because there are some institutions, or depending on which way you lean or which road you take, people can be very pushy, on because at the end of the day, like everything else, it's a business, and it's medical, and it's a whole bunch of other things. So you don't want anybody to dictate the moves that you and your family make.
Yeah, because it's a capitalist society.
Exactly. Unfortunately,
they're gonna push certain things on you. They're gonna push Medicaid or whomever your insurance.
And depending how,
but it's your child.
Exactly, and depending on how mentally ready and what type of person you are is going to dictate the road that they're going to put your child on. And the key thing is for you to drive the car, and don't let anybody else drive the car for you. Don't let a doctor, a therapist, counselor, school system, school board, don't let them dictate what's going to happen with your child. Especially because that you are now more than a parent. You are a legal advisor. You are an advocate. You are everything. Like, because this child cannot verbalize, and you know, he's up until a certain point, because there are some children that come further along in time, like, you know, time heals wounds, time heals certain aspects, but you have to put the footwork in. Okay. You have to do it. Like my grandmother said, you can't pray and not do anything about it. You have to put the footwork in. That's right. You know what I mean? So that's
the beginning.
That's the beginning stage.
Yeah.
That's the beginning. You have to apply something to it.
That's it.
You have to apply it.
Yeah. Like the old G.I. Joe saying, knowing is half the battle.
That's it.
Because the other part of it is action. Applying it.
That's it. But that was a big thing with us being in denial for so long. It's like, man, like we just felt like out of control as parents because, you know, one is
you didn't have the information.
We didn't have the information.
Yeah.
And then the early information that we did have felt like it was dropped on us like a ball. You know what I mean?
Too much.
It was just too much at one time. That's how we felt. Everything was moving along. We were trying to get him into school. I had just moved here. I'm still learning the way of the land here in Florida. I didn't have my car broke down. It was a lot of
let me ask you something before I forget, because you said something really important.
Yes, sir.
You said that was a really tough time discovering for you and your spouse.
Yes.
You and your wife.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that if you come to?
Oh, yes, for sure. That was probably one of the most trying times in our relationship. So I lost my mom. The first person I called was my wife, and she was living here in Florida. I was living in New Jersey, and she hopped on the plane. She got there before my best friend. Wow. So
and she in Florida,
and he lived about 20 minutes away. So nothing against him, but just to say that me and my wife have been very attached throughout the course of our journey together. So when this happens, it hit her hard, and you know, as a man, you want to be there for your wife or for your family, and it's like I was already going through something mentally, with the loss of my parents, and then to find out with my son having autism, it was a lot going on mentally. I think mentally we kind of like separated, like we were kind of like distant from each other until we can see that this is not gonna break us.
Okay.
You know what I mean? We had to get to that point of knowledge and understanding.
The reason I asked that question because it's like I just met you today, first of all, but I really like your spirit. When I came in, I pick up on spirit.
Yes. And
I can see you at I can almost say, tell me if I'm wrong, where you are now versus where you are then. You totally in a different place.
Totally.
And for other parents, because I see you through it, like I know that difficult, and I want you to share this.
Yes.
That as a husband, as a wife, you can feel like, oh, what did we do wrong? Yeah. You're starting to blame yourself, and when you didn't do anything wrong. But the reality is, it's probably on you like a ton of bricks, and it could affect your relationship. When that's when you really need to be there for one another instead of letting it pull you apart. Yeah. It should really bring you together. But the reality, it's like, and I would feel like, because did you ever sometimes feel like you do something? Because I know it's nothing that you did.
It's kind of,
but you feel that way.
Yeah, and it's kind of like subconsciously, you may not say it, but you're kind of blaming each other.
Yes, you don't say that. See, we talk about communication. You may not say it out loud. Yeah. But you think it or you feel it, and you don't really want to have an open conversation
because she knows what I was going through mentally, and I think she didn't want to put more on me than what I had to, you know what I mean? Than what I had going on in my head. So she didn't want to kick a brother when he was down.
Okay.
And I didn't want to, you know, because like I said, my wife was in labor for a long time. Her pregnancy was great. her labor was very rough. That they treated her in the while she was giving birth. Which is another thing within our community that happens a lot, where which is why we don't frequent doctors. We don't, which is a horrible thing in our community, because which is, now that I'm doing my research, then I'm getting older as a man, it's like, well, they mistreated us for so long in many different instances. So it's, but going back to the mental part of it, we very much were in a bad place as together and individuals. So I think all that played a big part in that time frame being so rough for us. We're thinking the worst of the worst. We're like, we might have to give up our son. We don't know what's going on because we didn't do our due diligence. But the more that we do our due diligence, the time gets better, and we start connecting. Like, all right, now that we know what we know, we can come back together and figure it out instead of following individually. You know what I mean? Like, that was a big thing. We were both like, she's in her corner, I'm in my corner. And we're not necessarily mad at each other, but we're mad at the situation, which is giving the feeling or the vibe in the house that we're mad at each other because we're not talking, we're not expressing, we're not being our usual, we're very connected. We're not talking, we're not even communicating, we're not even going as far as, what are we going to do for dinner? We're just going throughout our day, like wallowing in it. So, but once, I want to say maybe after like 6 months to a year, and we're going through like finding therapies and doing our own due diligence on what autism is and how we can improve our son and improve his quality of life. Once we figured that out, light switch went off, and it made us grow even more together after that. I think that time frame of our relationship together was the biggest test that we've ever had. From my mom to having our son to the diagnosis, from that time frame in itself. Afterwards, after we did our due diligence and we came along a little bit and started figuring out some things of how we can improve our quality of life, improve his quality of life, and move past this part of the black cloud. Move past that. Once that black cloud kind of moved out the way, it's like, man, we were tripping. Like we didn't even have to get that dark within ourselves, or deep within ourselves. Like, but like we don't know. You don't know.
But see, you said that your first time parents,
right?
What to expect? A first time parent as a child, get a fever, you run into the emergency room.
Yes.
It don't matter what it is, you run into because you're trying to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But just going back, because you had mentioned, I think you talked on it just a tad bit as far as well, let me just touch on this here. Every year that you come in, you share with me information. I can tell you have done a lot of research. Your wife, a lot of research centered around autism.
Yes.
And every year you're in treatment, with information. And that's why I want to kind of bring you onto the show and just to share with the audience, share with the world when it comes to this. And because I do know others that go through that. And sometimes people shy away from that. But when they know that someone else is actually going through it, now you can be more comfortable about it to say, hey, what can we do about it together? So that's touching on this. So and I know to your research, is it hereditary?
So there's no, as far as they've come within their research for autism, they still don't know certain things. Okay. There was a big thing around 2019, 2020 when, the pandemic and everything, where everybody thought that autism was being caused by vaccines.
Yeah.
I think the vaccines were kind of a catalyst for everything that was going on at that time. There's no proven fact that a vaccine can cause autism.
Okay.
There's no proven fact that anything itself causes autism.
I'm glad you said
It
that.
may be genetic.
Okay.
They do think that the father's side holds the trait more than the mother's side because there are more boys that have autism than girls. So they do think that the father does carry the gene, but that is not a hardcore fact. There's nothing set in stone other than what they know,
Okay.
which is from their studies that, generally around the 18 months, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. That's when you start noticing. But it could be developed sooner than that. They don't know. It can be developed sooner.
But ain't nothing really that you know of that can contribute to that, like from a childbirth to your research.
Nothing that I've found personally. And then, if there's anybody that watches your show that, correct me or come, because I'm still learning. Mm-hmm. We're all, I'm not an expert at this. I'm just a father that cares and wants, my life and people who are around me and others that may be affected the way that me and my family were to do your own due diligence. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
what's the definition of a expert?
You have to look that one up.
I think you've been around a long enough time. You got a lot of experience in it, but it's still a lot to learn. I get that part, of course, because someone could, have a child 20 years of age, and been dealing with it for 20 years.
And then on top of that, like, there's so many vast situations that you might have your child might have a milder case. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. And people might not even know that they might be autistic, but you might know because you're with that child every day.
That's true.
There's some people that are fully functional. There's some people that are not functional at all. There's some parents that will have to take care of their child the rest of their lives, in some type of capacity. So I want to help make people's lives a little bit easier because there was nobody to teach me this, other than, me and my wife had to put in the footwork. You know what I mean? So, like, especially within our community, we already have a bad stigmatism on us, or a lot of connotations that contribute to the way that we are. And I hate to see that that somebody on the spectrum or people's lives get affected by just the connotation. That's horrible. You know what I mean?
So what are some of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to autism?
I've had somebody tell me, your son doesn't look like he has autism. I'm like, well, what does autism look like?
Right.
Well, you know what I mean? So don't, the thing is to make people or have less ignorance around what it is or what it isn't.
Because maybe you can share this when you say that.
Yes,
I know, and I have some familiar with it, probably not as much as you, but I know there are different levels, different stages. Yes. So this child or person can be autistic. You can have 10 autistic and they can be totally different.
Totally different. Like one of my, you would say it's a habit. One of my son's favorite things to do, he just likes to rip paper. Like, that's one of his things. He likes to play music, but he'll play, like, you'll notice, like, with certain people on the spectrum, like, they love repetition. Like, so having a schedule is one of the best things that you could probably do. Like, we just learned this maybe like 2 years ago when my son was 4 years old. Keeping a schedule, like, my son has trouble sleeping. Like, he always has. Like, 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember my wife was pregnant with my son. He would start kicking around 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. specifically. And then when he was probably about 2 or 3 years old, he would wake up at 3 a.m. every morning and press as a daisy and just start playing his music. So he would play the same couple of seconds of a song. Okay. Like, but that's his thing. along with spinning. A lot of people like when your kids spin, but it's kind of like a catch-22 because it's like, what 2-year-old do you know that doesn't like to spin?
Exactly.
Right.
So how do you count some of these things?
Right.
And it's like, well, a neurotypical child would do the same thing.
Right.
So how do you like kind of justify you going to get your kid evaluated when some of the things that you pick up on are generally things that kids around that age group do?
Right.
So it's kind of like a catch-22.
It sure is.
And I guess I want to say this because being a father, I know in our community, we have stigmas when it comes to anything that what we want to say is normal or what we want to say is like autism or needing medical or something. Whereas you have to be able to like where your child is. If your child broke a leg, surely you would go to the doctor and get them help with their broken leg. Sure. But with autism or something that's not as easily to see, we want to hide it or pretend
that it's nothing going on.
But imagine if you pretend that your child didn't have a broke leg and you tried to heal it yourself. You're only making their leg is not going to heal because first of all, you're not a doctor. Now they got to deal with a broken bone, which could have been healed, or there's procedures to getting them better. Yeah. But if we ignore it or because we don't want to talk about it, we're not helping it.
That's the biggest thing. Like we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it and get it out there because you're doing yourself and your child a disservice if you do not, at least if you notice something or if somebody comes to you, you can't just shut it down automatically. You can't. You have to kind of embrace it. Now, the way that you receive the message can kind of hinder you from doing something about it because that could have been me and my wife easily. We could have got that. We could have received that message the way that they gave it to us and been completely turned off and just went about our lives and pretended like he doesn't need help. But then when he would have got to the age that he is now, he might have been progressively worse. And we might have been kicking ourselves in the butt at this point where we're at right now. And the reverse could have happened. We could be suffering right now in a bigger way, opposed to in the beginning where we just got it out of the way. So I preach to everybody: go and get your child. If you feel anything is wrong with your child, go and get them tested in some type of way, or even get a second opinion from one of your family members, or if you have a valued family member that you know will not sugarcoat things with you, let them kind of be your guide in helping you take that next step, because you will be your child will be at so much of a disadvantage later on in life. And there's, like I said, there's some people that may have to help their child until their last day. But you can make that time frame so much easier once you get a diagnosis or you try to attain some type of knowledge and get some type of help. That's the biggest thing.
And I was looking up expert on Merriam-Webster. And it says having, involving, or displaying special skill, knowledge derived from training or experience.
Okay.
So that is a form of being an expert, because it's based on your experience. You know, you've been experiencing this for 4 years, at least. I mean, the first 2 years, maybe not, but at least, I mean, the last 4 years, he's 6 years of age now. So there is a sense of experience there. And you guys, man, y'all, kudos to you as parents, man. And I'm glad that y'all came back together. And our word of the day was communication. And communication was one of those things that brought you back together. But researching and finding information and understanding the importance of providing that service for your child was one of those key motivations as well.
Yes.
So much props and thank you, really, to you guys. And I hope there's more parents out there that are like that. But is there a group or something that you guys kind of with other parents that
I'm in, so this is my wife's side of the research. So the thing about my wife, the joke within our house and our family is that she masters in results.
Okay.
So where I'm a little bit more lackadaisical, she's very much a go getter.
Okay.
Which so she went on Facebook, and so at the time, my wife was into crafting a lot.
Okay.
So she was joining like all these different craft groups and things like that. So she was just like, well, let me see if there's like autism groups. So she just goes on Facebook and she's like, oh, look at all these groups. Like, I even found a dad group for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's dope. So like, I'm in one group that I'm in on Facebook is Autism Dads of Orlando.
Okay.
So you can look that up as well. Shout out to them. But also within our research, there's a lot of sisters online right now that really pushing being advocates for mental health and child disabilities and things of that nature. So in short term, yes, there's tons of groups that you can go online, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you frequent your social media, and just type in autism groups, and I'm sure you will find thousands of them. You will find thousands. We just had the walk for autism in all Orlando area last week, so that was great. They always raise a lot of money, and if you want, it's not always about money. Donate your time. Right. Go and talk to talk, even if it's not structured. If you have anybody in your immediate circle that talk to a sister, a cousin of a cousin, talk to somebody and see if there's a family that might need help or just kind words. You know what I mean? It's more than just donating money. It's about being there and being present and like really being an advocate for because at the end of the day, it's about the kids as much as it's about the parents. Now, as a parent of an autistic child, we need as much help as we can get. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna sugarcoat that at all, because there's plenty of times where I kick my wife out the house. Like, just go and do something for yourself, because we don't get any time for the time for ourselves is when we're at work, and then we're coming home and doing more work. But check in on them, check in on the parents, check in on the child, make sure that the child is being taken care of, one, that and that the parent is in sound mental and physical spirit to take care of that child. Because one, if that child can't advocate for themselves, their parent is all they got. So if the parent is not of sound body and mind, then that kid is once again going to be in a disability. The whole family structure is going to be going on.
But leads me to this question: what are some of the rewards for raising an artist?
So even though he is labeled as nonverbal, like I said, he knows certain words, and is growing into a bigger vocabulary. But man, if he didn't have his tablet on, you wouldn't know my son was in the house. Like he is very like to himself, but he can draw. I have a couple, like I've been a audio engineer on and off for the better part of since I was 15 years old. So I have like a lot of beat machines and stuff like that around the house, and he tinkers with it and knows patterns and can follow melodies. And so everybody, anyone on the spectrum or that has a disability has a certain special power, of what we call it. We haven't really and we talk about this all the time because we haven't tapped into what his is yet.
Okay.
Because one, my son's probably gonna be a tall guy.
He's
gonna be like your dad.
He had a nice little height on the one.
My wife is probably 5'2". He's probably more than half her size already.
Oh wow!
At 6 years old, so he's probably gonna surpass her height in the next 3 to 5 years.
I was thinking about that because I was like, he can't be no older than 10. But
Yeah.
you know, when I seen him, he
Yeah.
looks like he's around about 10.
And he's very slender, but he's excessively strong. That's another thing. Aside from certain mental breakthroughs that can happen with them, they're excessively strong and or fast and or so our one therapist was letting us know, like, I was like, I want to get Cairo into sports, but I don't know how to start. I don't, because he's very much to himself. He's the only child. Two, if let's say me and my wife like go into the room to play with him, if he doesn't want to be bothered, he'll just walk out the room and go play somewhere else.
Oh, wow.
Y'all find something else to do.
He's like, don't just, but that's okay.
Yep.
But I'm telling this to his therapist, and she's like, well, why don't you do something that's a single sport like bowling or archery or martial arts or something where he doesn't need to be part of a team. Even though like you can develop, and that can develop into wanting to play like a team sport like basketball or football or anything else. But just to get him going, start off with something that's more of an individual sport. So we do jujitsu.
Okay.
So every Tuesday, Thursday, we go do jujitsu.
Okay.
So and
does he like it?
He likes it because it gets his frustration. I think he likes it because he gets his frustration out. Because on top of, that's one thing that you'll notice, especially if it's a nonverbal child, they might have behavioral issues because they can't express themselves. So what they call a meltdown might be more of, I'm just frustrated because you can't hear what's going on in my head. I can't tell you how mad or how pissed off I am right now. And I'm trying to let it out. So also take heed of that as well. We kind of had to have certain situations where Harold kind of had an incident where he ended up getting physical with the teacher on accident. He tried to pick him up, and he kind of like does this motion where if he doesn't want to be touched, he turns into, like, we call it the like a gator does a roll, and he does something like that because he doesn't want to be restrained. And so if you're trying to restrain him, he'll kind of do like this little whipping thing with his head. So, sometimes it's very much unintentional. The level of physicality that might come with an autistic person. That's why if you see like these instances we were talking about last time I saw you, where there was an officer that tried to detain an autistic child, and he was like 16 or 17. Now, this is a big kid, also
not a good thing.
On autism spectrum, excessively strong. So if you're trying to just run up on somebody like this, it's probably not going to end well, because they're going to feel, like, get off me, like anybody would. But with them, it's in heightened because all their senses are in heightened times a million.
And that badge means nothing to them. It's like you're bringing them for no reason.
Look, sometimes even with my son, I don't think he cares that we're his parents. It's like, I know you're my dad and I love you, but at this point in time, like, I'm just gonna remove myself because it is what it is. Like, they don't really feel empathy or have like certain type of emotional skill.
That goes to the law you were talking about. So you had someone see. That officer shouldn't have been dealing, first of all, with that child.
And that was one thing that we were talking about. Like, there needs to be a higher level of learning and higher level of learning on their side, and everybody just has to do a better job of like connecting the dots. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that we've come this far in our journey and they don't know much more than what they already know.
Right. We're going to get into the breaking news part, and I do want to talk about that law, and I do want to ask you about that and what you think about it, and we'll probably go back to what even you shared that was deep when it comes to that. But when and I know you had some questions as well, and you talked about the relationship. You talked about how distant you were at one point in time and how you guys came back together, which is amazing. It's been 2 years, a lot of information, like I said, that you have shared with me that I felt like, the community needs to know about it. But we have, within our culture, we know autism is broad. I mean, that happens in anyone's culture. But we try to highlight, what goes on in our culture.
Yes.
And some of you talk about some of the misconceptions when it comes to that. Someone's, looking at a person and saying that they don't look like they're autistic. But it's still certain things that we have to consider within our community that oftentimes we don't. Can you share some of those things, like among Black parents, that is, and in our community that we don't consider when it comes to autism?
I think the biggest thing that we don't consider in itself is we're just in denial about certain things. One, with being Black and in autism, or anything mental health or health related. Like there's so many things. There's so many stigmatisms.
Does it kind of go back, historically in this country?
Yeah,
would you say that's a part of it?
I would say those things tie in together for sure. I think the biggest thing in the Black community is that we don't want ourselves or our children to be labeled the wrong way, or in general to have any type of negative stigmatism on them. I think that's one of the biggest things in our community that kind of hinders us from doing certain things. It's like throughout my life, I've school, different settings or whatever like that. I've had people tell me that you speak well, and I take offense to that because in my eyes that means, oh, you speak well for a Black man. And it's like, but it's so I don't know if I read too much into it, but that's kind of what I get from it, especially if it's not a brother telling me that. Even if so. So with that being said, it's like I think we have a problem with people either having an opinion and or labeling it as being judged. You know what I mean? I think that we got to learn how to cause a difference between the two. You know,
I think that could be something. I know I'm always I seek to pray for a person. Like as I done got older in age, I understand some the history of this country and what our women experience when they go through labor and pregnancy and things like that. So you always, when you hear about a person, especially when they're close to you, they always you put them in your prayer. To make sure that you have a healthy child. Because we need more children in our community. We need more marriages like you do. My brother married, I'm married, so
all right.
It's good to have Black families within the community. We want them all to be healthy and strong. And you kind of talked on some of the rewards. You talked on some of the things that when you see him, how focused he is in his craft and what he's focused on. I think that's a beautiful thing. But even you guys learn a lot raising autistic child. You learn patience. You learn how to come together and deal with it. So it's a lot that I think you overlooking as far as how that helped you and your wife. Talk about some of those things.
Well, I overlook it because we're still in the midst of the fight.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's hard to look back and you got to run forward.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but I'm very grateful just to be at the point where we are right now. Like even my wife was so scared. Like my son just recently lost his first 2 teeth, and my wife is like, "Well, she was like stressed. Like we stress about certain things because we don't know until we get there." She's like, "Well, What if when he loses his first? This is months ago. What about if he loses his first couple of teeth and he like sees the blood and he has and he starts spazzing out, and like, what if you're not here? What if? Yep. And that's always the first thing that my wife kind of leads with, because as the man, like my wife cannot do any physical stuff with him because he's almost bigger than her. Yeah, so I have to, like, if we need to give him medicine or he needs to be picked up or anything like that, I have to do it because my wife can't physically do it. Mm-hmm. So if we have to go that route, she's like, well, how do you think he's gonna react if his tooth falls out? Like, what do you think that's gonna be? And I'm like, I really don't know. We have to get there. Like, I don't know. Only God willing, I'm here when it happens. Right. I get home from work and my wife is on the floor, like on her hands and knees looking for something. I'm like, what are you looking for? He's like, he lost his tooth. He pulled it out himself. Oh, wow. I'm like, oh, wow. But how did he he's just playing. Yep. So she's like, he pulled it out himself. It's loose. He pulled it out. Yeah, he just pulled it out. So, you kind of have to get to an experience to know that. And, the further along we get in more experiences that we have and things that we try to test out and do, as he gets a little bit older, things get a little bit easier. Right. It's not a fact, but most people tend to think around between 6 and 7, there's like a light switch that goes off in an autistic child or a child with even like autism, Asperger's, anything along that spectrum. That 6 and 7 is kind of like a turning point in their lives where, depending on how much work you're already doing, it can make them flourish. Or the work that you are not doing, it will make them revert. So we are trying our best. Now, there's going to be times naturally that an autistic child might revert back into certain, like, or never lose certain things. Like the things that my son was doing with his hands when he was 2 years old, it's called stimming. Okay, that's what stimming is. Yes, that's what stimming is. Or sometimes, like, he'll take that pencil and plank it across his teeth. Or even when he was 2 or 3 years old, he was still in that same daycare right before we got him up out of there because we didn't like how things were being handled. They would say, Mr. Murphy, Carl likes to eat mulch. And I'm like, what do you mean? Is he like trying to eat it? Like, bite it? Like, this point, he only had a couple teeth, still teething. And they're like, no, he's just like rubbing it on his gums. I'm like, well, he's teething. Yeah, and that goes back to this is something that a typical child around this age group would do. I'm like, it seems like you're pinpointing, like, or trying to put negative things on him to like what's trying to, like, what are you trying to do here? Yeah. But he was stimming. Yep. Which can help soothe whatever they're going through mentally. So always pay attention to that. Because some stimming can be severe where it's like they're trying to hurt themselves. Okay. So you have to pay attention to the levels. It's, like I said, it's levels of everything. But but even still now to his day, he'll he has like a lot of fidget toys, fidget spinners, things like that. Just to keep his hands preoccupied. But even still, he'll still, like, you'll catch him every now and again, and he'll just be looking out the window going like this, rubbing something on his lip or his gum. It's just something like, if it suits him, we have to, and that's another thing. You have to realize what's helping and what's hindering as well, because there's certain things that will help and certain things that will hinder, as far as, like, even with stimming, even though it's tending to be something that's going to calm your child down, sometimes it can be a negative thing if they're overdoing it, because he could easily take one of those toys and, like, get mad at something on his tablet and clank a little bit too hard. Now his gum is busted or his lip is busted or something like that. So you kind of have to monitor the level of play opposed to, is this a meltdown, or because it can happen very fast.
But his is milder than normal when he does that. Yeah, you notice.
Yeah. So sometimes, but there can be a part where he's like getting frustrated that he can't find what he wants or his tablet, or um, he might be have some building blocks or something, and he's building something and it's not coming along the right way that he liked. So he might throw all of it. He might throw all of it. He'll start all over again. You know what I mean? So the level of from happy to sad can turn like a light switch. Just so like that's why I always say you have to like monitor. Are these good noises? Are these bad noises?
You know what? And I was going to get to that point because you bring up a great point. Is how do you approach communication with your son, and what strategies do you use?
So me personally now. So one thing that you will notice with children on the spectrum is they don't really give eye contact. That was one of the biggest things. I used to tell my wife, I don't think he likes me because he doesn't look at me. He doesn't. And now that we figured out that that's part of autism, I was like, oh wow, I felt so bad because I was like, man, I was thinking the worst, right? Because I didn't know, like, I'm like, why does he look at you? But he looks at my wife like she's the most amazing thing he's ever seen, and I'm like, man, does he just not like me, or does I'm like, I know you just gave birth to this guy, but like, what's going on? Like, does he know that I'm his dad? Yeah. She's like, he knows you. Like, come on, don't be silly. But that's one they will not give eye contact. Yep. But now, so if he's at a point, let's say he's playing, and I want him to do something for me, I have to turn the tablet off, or like stop him from doing whatever he's doing, and I stand him up, and I don't grab his face to look at me, but I will like get closer to his ear, like, come on, buddy, it's time to go. Or like, so I will have to like get him so he acknowledges that I need him to do something. And this might not work for everybody. This is just how I handle how it works in my house. But this might be something that you can do. Or the key with Cairo's self is him knowing what's going on. Like last year we went to Georgia to visit my in-laws, and a couple days before we left, I'm like, Cairo, remember we're going to Georgia to visit Pop-Up. Cairo, we're going to Georgia on Saturday to visit Pop-Up. We're going to leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, so make sure you're ready. 8 o'clock Saturday morning, he was up before me and my wife. I had a cooler sitting in front of our by our front door. So he doesn't dress himself all the way fully yet, but he will go and pick out his clothes. So he went and got his clothes. He sat them on the cooler next to him, got his tablet. He was just sitting on the cooler, like, I'm ready to go.
You're supposed to be going to see Papa.
We're going to see Papa. You told me 3 days ago.
That's right.
So it's repetition. The biggest thing is I don't know what triggers in the mind that they associate a schedule. But even like when I told you, Cairo always had trouble sleeping. But now that we got him on a show, like no more tablet past 8 o'clock. Cut the tablet off 8 o'clock. You can read a book. We'll read a book in the bed, but you have to be in the bed. There's no more like just running around and doing what, you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of the way that we try to compensate or make ourselves feel better, me and my wife, was just letting him roam.
Let him do it.
And just let him do things.
Yeah.
Until we found out, like, that's cool on the weekends, maybe.
Yeah.
But through the week, especially once he got, because this is his first year of kindergarten. So once kindergarten started, we had to have like more of a hardcore schedule, because we both have to work. We all have to be out of the house by 8 o'clock in the morning. He has to start school by 8:30 because one of the services that his new school has is they do speech therapy in school for everybody in his class. So that's one less thing that we don't have to pay for. We'll get into the financial aspect of of all this as well. But that's one thing that helps. So having the schedule and letting them know, like, oh, we're gonna do this Monday, or have a schedule in your house. So even though, like, don't treat your child like they just don't know anything. Give them, And I had to tell my wife, like, we can't talk to him like a baby anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of confusing. And you can kind of see it because, at 5 and 6, 4, 5, and 6, you're kind of in a weird transition anyway.
Yep.
You kind of want to be a bigger kid, but you kind of still want to be a baby.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I felt like he's already gonna naturally be in that type of state. But let's just talk to him like a big guy. You know what I mean? Instead of talking to him to like a little guy, because that's gonna throw him off even more. So when he wants to stem or have something cool on his gums, like we're not making him feel bad about it. Like we know that you're a big guy. That's just something that you like to do. You know what I mean? So it's not making him feel any indifference about what's going on in his head or his body.
Gotcha.
I heard you say something earlier, and you mentioned about your wife, and I want to double back to that one. Sometimes you have to just go out and take a break.
Yes.
I know you have to take care of your son, and both of you have to take care of your son.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a balance between taking care of your son and taking care of yourself. I heard you say you do it for your wife. Are you conscious of doing it for yourself or for both of you?
Oh, no, I'm very conscious of, like, we both have to take a break every now and again. Everybody has to take a break. Everybody in the house takes a break. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
We have to take care of each other mentally, physically. The thing after losing my parents, that like threw a light switch in me. The way I eat, the way I think, especially like coming up in one of my I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the group Little Brother. They're a rap group out of North Carolina. They're called Little Brother. You guys should check them out. They're great. One of their album, they're real underground, but they've been together for a long time now. But one of their albums is called The Minstrel Show. Okay, so that just lets you know what type of stuff that they're on. But the one gentleman in the group, his name is Fonte, and he has a song about him losing his father, and it's talking about how his father passed. And we go to the repast and we eat the same stuff that killed him. And that triggers something in my head, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, and as many repasts as I've been through in the last couple of years, it really hit hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't live that way for my son. You know what I mean? Especially now that I know everything I know about autism and what I may have to do for the rest of my life to service this child. I have to be on a different level. I have to, like, mentally, physically. Before I met you, I was maybe 200 pounds heavier.
Wow. So you change your diet, change your lifestyle.
Completely. Like, it started before, like, I battled with it throughout my parents. Being my father had been sick a long time. My father probably had his first stroke when I was in high school. So, which is going to be almost 20 years ago now. So he had been sickly for a long time. My mother, not so much. It kind of happened quickly, but I come from a family where everybody's big.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, or a majority of us are bigger folks. So to see that a majority of my life and to lose them like so fast like that, I had to make a change. And then once he came, I knew I had to make a change because I knew I might have to take care of this child for the rest of my given life. So to do that, I have to do the utmost to make sure I'm here for him, or to set him up in a way for when I'm not, that he's okay. So those two things really played the biggest parts of my life the last 4 or 5 years.
See, that's the other side of the rewards of that, because now you're more conscious of how you eat. So it's a reward to that as well, that we don't always take into consideration, that you have to discover that continuously over the years, like you mentioned. But we're gonna go to a quick commercial break, and we're gonna come right back. We're gonna talk about the law HB 1275, and we're gonna get your input on that as well.
Hi, my name is Joe, and I'm an enrolled agent with Scott & Associates accounting firm. As you can see, we work diligently for our clients, making sure that all of their tax and accounting needs are met. Come take a walk with me.
At Scott & Associates, we pride ourselves in providing exceptional service to our clients. We firmly stand behind all of the work that we do. However, we have also put measures in place to protect our clients should something ever go wrong.
To schedule a tax appointment for your business or personal need, text or call us today at 321-754-1360. And remember, you can always count on Scott.
Because Scott & Associates always treats me like family, I refer my family to them. So when preparing for my taxes and I know exactly what to bring in coming in, it makes the process so much easier. Anyone should hire Scott & Associates because they are professional, respectful, and very knowledgeable. And with all of my heart, I can always count on them.
All right, so welcome back to Live Talk, and we're having a discussion. We're going into another part of the show, which is going to tie into with our main topic of the day, and it's HB 1275. And I'm gonna just read briefly, and I just want to get some input from you about what you think about this here. But the bill, known as the Protect Our Loved Ones Act, it authorized a local law enforcement agency to develop and maintain a database known as a Persons with Disabilities Registry of persons who may have certain developmental, psychological, or other disabilities or conditions, including but not limited to autism spectrum disorder, Alzheimer's disease, or a related dementia disorder, and Down syndrome that may be relevant to interactions with law enforcement. As you know, the history of our country, and especially within our community, we oftentimes have police officers come out into our community and act before they even, consider anything. Next thing you know, one of our children are dead. What do you think about this registry, and just and making sure that parents are registering their child? What you think about that? Just give us some input.
So I think the initial concept of it could be great. It's just on their side to do their due diligence and send the right people that have been trained properly to handle the situation. You know what I mean? Because the wrong person handling the wrong situation can end up in a really bad situation. So I think the general concept of it is great, though, for them to, they just have to do their due diligence before they hit the scene and make sure that the right people are handling the situation. It's not somebody that's gonna de-escalate instead of escalate the situation, for sure.
Did prior, because I heard about this particular law. I thought it was a great idea because when we think about mental health as well, and that's huge within our community. I still think a lot of us need some counseling, some therapy.
For sure.
Coming out of post-slavery, I think we all need that.
Yeah.
Was there anything in place prior to, like, is it anything in place right now? I know with the school systems, you have to let them know. Well, they probably already know. I mean, because you have,
Yeah, once you get evaluated, you have to go through IEP meetings. You have to go through a lot just to get them registered or picking a school system for them to flourish in.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you about the school system. What challenges, or what can you help another parent getting into the school, getting their child education?
Yes. So our child's pediatrician, oh man, she's amazing.
Shout out. What's her name?
You might have a card on her.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Okay.
she's local. If anything, I'll drop her information. If if there's like a
yes, sir. I get that.
so we'll drop it. But just have somebody like that to kind of help you. Or if you're not equipped to do it on your own, get somebody to help you do the due diligence yourself.
Okay.
But thank God we had our pediatrician that has helped us so much along the way. I don't know if she had expertise dealing with people, children on the spectrum, or she has a lot of patients that are on the spectrum. Whatever her background was, she helped us so much. Once he did get diagnosed, and we kind of expressed to her how we were feeling and how scared or intimidated, we laid it all out on the line with her. And she was like, look, once we get there, she gave us a list of counselors. She gave us a list of the best school districts for children on the autism spectrum. So, if you don't have anybody to guide you down that road, do your due diligence on your own and see, if you find out you're not in a good district that can handle children on the spectrum or with children with mental issues or anything like that. It's a hard move because we've moved 2 times in the last couple of years. Just trying to find the proper help, or to be sectioned in the proper way where we can get him to school or to therapy and back to work and back home, and it won't totally throw off our day to day. But those are certain things you're gonna have to talk about and go through, and really, because once your child, or once they get evaluated and you start going on this journey, it's gonna affect your day-to-day living. It's gonna affect a lot of things in the beginning, but once you get to a certain place, once you start figuring it out, it'll make you feel so much better that you took the journey instead of just letting it be.
Okay. All right. So we're at pretty much at that time, and it's almost like I want to throw that back to you, but you just shared a lot of information that a parent. Well, I'll give you this last word. There's a parent out there right now that's where you were 4 years ago. What would you tell that as your closing words? What would you share with those parents or that parent?
Take your time. Don't feel pressured. Do the work, and don't be at a disservice to yourself or your child.
Okay.
And pray.
Is it any, like, because you mentioned the Facebook pages and reach out, like, would you recommend them getting connected with a Facebook group or something?
Yes, but any way that you can get some type of help, whether mental, physical help for your child and or yourself as a parent, because this journey, it's their journey, but you as a guidance in their journey, you have to stay mentally and physically sound as well. So join a group, talk to somebody, join the counseling sessions with your child, because sometimes it's not about it's about the family dynamic. And you both are in it. Everybody's in it together. So the most help that you can receive, the better off that you will be.
Awesome. All right, Minister, you want any last words?
I know it's getting close. Herman, I'm going to throw a quick one back at you if you can. First of all, I love your shirt. Can
Thank you.
Please, I saw Autism Dad, but I couldn't see
Yes.
everything else.
So I'm kind of stand up.
Okay.
Okay.
Some people look up to their heroes. I'm raising my. I like that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm raising my hair. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
And see, he wearing
that's
that
what
shirt.
It is.
You see, I love black people, especially black men, when they fathers and they standing up. And see, he wearing his shirt proudly.
Proudly.
And we may not have time, so if we may have to follow back up. But because I know it's in our community. I heard you mention financial, and it's got to be some challenges there,
Yes.
and that can be difficult.
Okay,
But I know you're making through it.
So really quickly, there's on the financial side, there are a lot of grants. There's loans. You just have to do your due diligence about what's going on in your area. Who's running your area, things like that. But there are a lot of services, and even just one quick one, you can get your child registered just to have a handicap sticker, whether it's a mental, physical, anything like that, and that's just touching the surface, just off basis, so there's a lot of things that just do your due diligence, do your research, because there's a lot of help out there, and don't be afraid to receive the help.
Yes.
And that's a big thing in our community. Do not be afraid to receive the help.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. All right, Minister, you want to close out with anything?
Yeah, and all I would just say is first of all, I want to thank Brother Herman for coming on and sharing his story, his journey with us, and for any other family out there, here's a living testimony that you don't have to be on this road alone. We have to kill that shame and the stigma and live life to the fullest.
Yes, sir. Indeed. And I just leave us with this. When it comes to autism is not a tragedy. Ignorance is a tragedy. And today we want to share information about autism, the truth behind autism, coming from an experienced father and parent who's still living it today. But, that information is invaluable. So we thank you for the information you shared today. Maybe we can get them back on another time.
We can do a part two. We can do a part two.
Because there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of other stuff we want to kind of touch on, and like I said, as being an expert, you're gonna experience more and more and more. You can share that information with us.
Yes.
But this kind of comes to the end of our show, and I say from the host, peace and prosperity, and from Live Talk, we are out. Thank you for watching Live Talk. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Live Talk Orlando. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit on the notification button so that you can see more videos like this. You want to join the show? Email us at livetalkorl@gmail.com. You can also follow the host on Facebook and Instagram at Arthur Jeremiah. And visit the website, thenoystore.com, to pick up your copy of The Spiritual Significance of a Name.